Good morning, everybody. Well, it is Wednesday again, isn't it? We are here for our community circle conversations. So thrilled that so many of you continue to join us week after week. I know for me, Wednesdays are a reason to get a little bit more dressed up. And I was chatting with a friend who's also part of our nonprofit community and complimenting him on his attire last Wednesday. And he said, "Well, I have community circle conversations. So have to get a little bit more dressed up on those days. You don't have to. You don't have to, but we're glad if we're your reason to change out of the pajamas for a day. So as you will notice, there are a few housekeeping items I want to call to everybody's attention this morning. First, we're keeping everybody muted and the video off for the first half of the session. And then we're going to try something different with the breakout rooms today. So we have the opportunity for you as you are joining us to try, we're going to try this. So experiment. We're going to invite you to try and select which of the breakout rooms that you'd like to be a part of today. So you can indicate, we have 3 nonprofit leaders who are going to be facilitating the groups, sort of starting the conversation, and then maybe even sharing a little bit more about what they're doing within their own organizations, so we can have some conversations that are maybe targeted a little bit more towards you and the size of your organization, the focus area of your organization. So we'll talk a little bit more about this later in the morning, but you can indicate your desired breakout room by adding a number in front of your name. So I have information here on the screen about how to change your name in a Zoom meeting. It might be a little bit more challenging for those of you who are just joining me on the phone. But if you are a participant with video, and you can change your name, there are instructions on here about how to do that. We'll just have you enter the number in front of your name. So I would be here. Let me go ahead and change my name so I can show you. I would be, for instance, 1 Brianne Sanchez, and I even could add in the organization that I'm with. So you can see that I've changed my name here. This will show me that it will show me, everybody, when you do this, it should show up in the participant list, and then I'll try and zoom you out to the appropriate chosen breakout room. So as we are about to get started presenting today, I would invite you to just take a minute. We'll have Amy from Community Youth Concepts, which is a little bit more of a grassroots youth development organization. Amy is a co-founder, and she's got I don't know, I would say maybe like a smaller team, but they are doing amazing work. Amy is an exceptional facilitator and developer. So she'll be in room 1. Room 2 will be Andrew Allen from YSS. And then 3, Curt from the Science Center of Iowa will be facilitating that breakout room. So you can take your time if you don't want to choose quite yet, if you don't know those folks. They'll be giving you a little bit of a really brief presentation before we go into breakout rooms. So you'll be able to get to know them a little bit there and kind of decide who will speak to you best in your facilitated breakout. So that's just kind of a new opportunity, something different that we're trying. So if you decide, ooh, I see a bunch of folks already kind of making the decision about what room they want to be in. So that's great. If you haven't made that decision yet, no worries. All right, I will kind of recap this when we get to the point of breaking out. But for now, let's move on to the next slide, and I will go ahead and share kind of the agenda for today. So first, we will be in just a minute inviting Christy Naus to do a preview of community leadership initiatives on recovery and reopening. So we really listened to what everybody was saying they wanted to hear in these community circle conversations. And we did really think through, what are the responsibilities of reopening, or if you've already been open this whole time, kind of re-emerging into this next normal. And in May, we're hoping to really extend that conversation about, what's next, that reemergence, that reopening through our themes for this month. So Christy will give a little bit of a preview of what's happening kind of at a community leadership level. And then we're really excited to have Tammy from Employee and Family Resources joining us to talk about fostering employee well-being during this uncertain time and this time of transition. Or even I've been hearing the term, and it's one of my favorite terms, we're living in liminal space right now. So that kind of in-between phase that we're in right now, how to really foster your employee well-being during this period. And then we'll also hear a little bit from Amy, Andrew, and Curt. Suzanne Mineck from Mid-Iowa Health Foundation will be kind of welcoming our speakers. And then we'll transition into our deeper discussion breakout rooms, followed by we'll have Dustin Miller joining us again. And Dustin, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you here. Do you want to just give us a quick preview of what you will be talking about in your Legislative Matters recorded session?
Yeah, really briefly, what we're going to cover today is, to Brianne's point, in the one-on-one meetings, I've heard a lot of questions about funding and specific to healthcare providers. So today we're going to talk about the $175 billion Public Health and Social Services Emergency Fund. Some of you that are healthcare providers maybe have received a payment or two payments over the last month. We're going to go through that and talk about how to access the rest of the money. And then to Brianne's point, and what you'll hear from Christy, next week, just to give you a little preview, we're going to cover kind of how getting back to work and thoughts and considerations from an employer perspective in how to protect your employees and also understand what changes in the law and what exists in the law to get you back safely.
Great. Thank you, Dustin. Wonderful. So on that cue, Christy, I will invite you to start sharing your video and unmute with us. And then we will go ahead. There you are. Perfect. Well, good morning, Christy.
Can you see me?
I can see you,
Okay.
yes. I think everybody else can too then. That's a good sign. Well, we'll go ahead, maybe if you just wanted to start out maybe talking a little bit about what you're hearing from the partnership and some other partners. And then I have a slide on the next slide talks a little bit about emergency management. So let's go back for a second, Bridget, to the previous slide, and Christy can kind of give an overview of just what are you hearing, Christy?
Great. Thanks, Brianne. Hello, everybody. You know, it's really just been in the last week to 10 days that I think we're beginning to really take that look forward. We've all been so busy in dealing with the here and now and getting resources and tools developed and out there to the community. But there's a lot of thoughtful planning going on behind the scenes to think about this re-entry, re-emergence, reopening, but also then recovery. And very clear that those work sort of hand in glove together, because if we're not really careful about the reopening in our community, the recovery is going to take a lot longer and be even harder. So just know that behind the scenes, people are very much working in collaboration to have those discussions, and even through the couple of initiatives that I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about. And please know too that I would say these are in the early stages. There certainly is opportunity for input. And in fact, there's a survey that I'll get to Brianne, and she can push out to you following this meeting to actually give input to the DSM Forward Task Force. So that's the first thing that we'll talk about. And so this is actually, DSM Forward is actually the effort to look at what is the playbook, what are the tools that will be helpful to our community as we look at re-entry back into business, back into serving clients, and that sort of thing. So really, I envision it to be very tactical, which is what I need. I know that that's at least the input many of us are giving. Give us thoughtful strategies, tools, and deliberate sort of steps that we can take within our organizations to make sure we're keeping our staff safe and also the clients that we work with. So the DSM Forward Task Force will be comprised of the Greater Des Moines Partnership Board of Directors, their executive committee, Capital Crossroads leadership, and then certain community leaders who intersect closely with economic development and community development work in Greater Des Moines. There were just meetings this Monday morning to help bring the task force members up to speed. And there has been a national consulting company called Baton Global that has been, they're actually a global consulting firm that has been brought into the community to help guide us through this. And I've received a very brief preview of what they've already got going for us in terms of a web presence and tools and kind of the areas that they're looking at, and it brought great comfort to me to know that they are already so far down the road in the design of this, and the things that were highlighted on the web platform were definitely the things that I'm looking for as the leader of an organization. So I hope that they'll be helpful to all of you as well. So again, there's a survey that's available to give input to that. I'm sure it's on the partnership's website, but again, I'll get it to Brianne and she can push it out to you following the meeting today. And I am guessing that within the next, I guess I shouldn't say because I don't know for sure, but I like to make things up. I mean, within the next week to 2 weeks, I really think there's going to be something there to give us some guidance, and we'll at that point be able to hopefully focus one of these community circle conversations on that information so that you can have a chance to really dig deeper and then pull together to talk about some of the strategies that you're developing in your organizations as well. Then coupled with that, there's a Polk County Disaster Recovery Partnership being formed. Brianne, I believe we have a slide for that. Thank you. And this sort of gives you a sense of who's going to be involved and what areas will be looked at. It's meant to be very, very comprehensive. So again, very beginning stages and certainly opportunity for input. They will engage Pat Bodie here locally to facilitate this process, and will look at various areas of health in our community. So true physical, mental, and public health. In terms of the financial health, it will be looking at community reentry or recovery as well as business recovery, looking at basic needs, housing, food, childcare, financial security, schools, and then also our government health, so county and local. As you can see, this is still getting meat on the bones in terms of the structure, but we're in good hands in this community knowing that this is being put together and planned. So again, that will be something we can bring back to you over time and help you know more about, or how to engage as there are opportunities for input. Can I take one more second, Brianne?
Sure.
All right, I'm gonna look right in the camera. I just need to say to all of you, I am so grateful for the nonprofit sector that we have in this community serving all of us. It brings me great comfort, and I am in awe of all that you do every day. I have dedicated my life to working in the nonprofit sector, but the last 18 years really working for you. And I just couldn't be more proud of this community, and I'm inspired by your commitment and your work on behalf of making us better. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Christy. And I think the community, I'll respond on their behalf to say, thank you for representing our interests in these conversations as a sector. And we really appreciate that. We're looking forward also to having AJ Mumm from the Polk County Emergency Management actually be our presenter next week. So that will be a really great opportunity. Again, in the follow-up, you can send me questions that you want AJ to cover, and we'll be happy to help focus our time with him on your specific questions. I know emergency management shared, we want to talk about what's next and we want to talk about reopening, but they're pretty clear that we're still in the response and immediate kind of phase here right now around that. So there is a great opportunity to talk with AJ. And next, let's continue on to Suzanne, if you would like to join us via video. Just kind of frame up. I know we've done a little bit of framing so far around, what we're going to be talking about. But if you want to just welcome Tammy and kind of why we thought we'd bring EFR and their voice today.
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone. So as a committee, we were discussing this fostering the well-being of our employees as we continue to work through the midst of crisis, and then also, as Brianne so nicely stated, reemerge. And I was struck, I don't know how many of you remember, it was just about 2 years ago that we brought Andrew Zoli, who wrote the book Resilience, to Des Moines. And I thought I'm going to steal a little bit of Tammy's time and read a quote that Andrew writes in his book, because I just thought it was so perfect this morning. He said, resilience is not solely a function of the community's resources, though of course those help, nor defined solely by the strength of their formal institutions, ditto. Instead, we found resilient communities frequently relied as much on informal networks rooted in deep trust to contend and heal disruption. Efforts undertaken to impose resilience from above often fail. But when those same efforts are embedded authentically in the relationships that mediate people's everyday lives, resilience can flourish. So today, when I was thinking about several people to invite and talk about fostering that resilience, but the essential element of trust and the role our teams play in delivering on our missions, there were 4 people that came to mind. Of course, Tammy Hoyman, CEO of EFR, is one of our great treasured organizations in this community. Really, this is what they do day in and day out, and now it's at a heightened level. But I'm thrilled to have Tammy kind of kick us off with things we can all be thinking about, best practices to know about. And then Curt Simmons, Andrew Allen, and Amy Croll will all come in and just give a few reflections, if you will, before we break into groups. So with that, Tammy, I'm going to have you unmute and bring your video, and I'll mute and get out of the way. And thank you again for agreeing to do this morning.
Thank you, Suzanne. Can you hear me and can you see me? Good? All right. I will go ahead and get started. And I just wanted to start out by thanking Suzanne and Brianne for inviting me today to talk on this really important topic of employee mental health during these trying times, especially for the nonprofits who are on the front lines of supporting our communities. So I'm here today to both speak a little bit from the employer perspective, and I'd like to share some guiding principles that we have adopted during these trying times. I had the good fortune of listening to a webinar with Patrick Lencioni a few weeks ago, and they threw out a few tidbits that have really helped us to help support and connect with our employees since all of us are working from our home offices. So the first piece of advice that we heard and have taken to heart is connecting frequently with our employees, both individually and with the teams. Don't assume no news is good news. Reach out, check in with your employees, make sure that you're regularly having your team meetings or staff meetings, which leads me into the next bullet point: over communicate your plans with your employees. You cannot share enough information about what you are planning to do with the programs and your agency pertaining to any changes in their work environments. Are we closing programs? Are we postponing events? For those who are continuing to report to the office and report to environments where they're taking care of our clients, do we have the proper protective equipment? And the folks who are working remotely have what they need to do their jobs. The other big thing, I think, is that we can't expect the same levels of productivity that we would under normal, quote unquote, normal circumstances. In this webinar, they recommended that we focus on accountability and adjust productivity accordingly. And then, of course, recognize and reward the hard work and the successes. Do your best to plan fun activities. We've gotten really creative with some Zoom meetings when we've had up to 40 employees that have joined, and we've played silly trivia games and given out small gift cards as gifts or as rewards. So those kinds of things, I think, really help to bring your teams together and at least try to reduce some of the isolation. From the EAP perspective, I want to share what we're hearing from clients and employers and share some guidance we are giving to our EAP customers. We are hearing a lot of clients struggling with work-life balance, particularly when they are immersed in their lives at home and trying to get their jobs done, many without childcare. These employees are stressed to the max. Their stress is having unintended consequences, leaving them feeling guilty, anxious, distracted. And of course, this impacts employee productivity. We're hearing stories that employees are working up to 18 hours a day, feeling like they need to be on and available at any time. And not surprisingly, we're seeing very high rates of depression, loneliness, anxiety, fear, and the rates of substance use and overeating have increased. What I've shared with some of my friends who don't work in this field is I think there's a lot of self-medication going on in terms of people not knowing how to deal with the emotions that they're experiencing during these very unusual times. So what we are recommending to our employers and things that they can do and things that our colleagues can do is set clear and reasonable expectations for employees. If it's acceptable for employees to modify their work hours to balance their self and child care responsibilities, do it. This may require us to rethink what priorities are reasonable in this new environment. The old way of doing things is really not an option. Even if our work or the demand on our workload has not changed, we are all living through a trauma, and we can't pretend that it's business as usual. We're encouraging employers to consider how tasks can be done efficiently and effectively without any added emotional strain or stress. Another recommendation is to proactively demonstrate compassion. As I mentioned earlier, don't wait for your employee to tell you their stress. Assume that they are. Assume that they're struggling and ask how you can support them. What do they need to balance their health needs and get their work done? Consider limitations to getting work done, like having young children around, having to prepare meals for the family, and revise your expectations of their work as much as you possibly can. One size fits all obviously doesn't work these days. And I think it's important to remember that healthy employees are more productive. So some special advice for those of us who are delivering services and support to others: ensure that caseloads are reasonable, and help maintain support for employee health. The things that I've mentioned earlier are especially critical to those of us who work in the helping professions. We're all experiencing this trauma, so our capacity may be limited. One of the things I hadn't really thought about that has come around is encouraging employees to take time off. They can't really go on a vacation, but sometimes just a day off from work to do something you enjoy, and that will help your mental health can make a big difference. And in terms of the future, returning to work, we're starting to hear about things reopening. Keep in mind, employees are afraid. People are scared to go back to work when people are still dying. I think employers need to consider that any decision to send people back to a group work environment will have consequences for the health of others, and it could lead to more people getting sick and more people dying. These decisions need to be made in practical ways with consideration for the health and safety of individuals and communities, both our employees and our clients. I know we all have a commitment to our mission, and we want to reach our people, but we also have to balance that with everyone's health. I think it's safe to say that employees will want to know what the plans are for reopening, and it's really important to communicate well in advance of any changes. This crisis requires compassion and creative thinking. I really encourage employers to think outside of the box, which we've all been forced to do. There are some silver linings in this situation as well. So I think if we can focus on those and take our time, be thoughtful in our decisions, and I wanted to share one final story that one of my counselors shared with me, was that she had seen a client who presented an emotional crisis and noted that her boss was encouraging the team to be fighters and work harder than ever and be strong and at least as productive as they were when they were in the office. Needless to say, this employee had a young child, has been losing sleep to try and keep up with the emails and be present around the clock, and was becoming dangerously close to having a total breakdown. In my opinion, this is the wrong message and one that operates heavily on denial. So I hope some of these pointers and pieces of guidance have been helpful. I understand I'm preaching to the choir here. I think many of the folks who've joined this conversation live this day in and day out, but I think sometimes hearing some of the reinforcing messages can be helpful. So thank you for the time today, and please encourage employees to reach out to get help around their mental health. Every counselor I know is, operating and offering services remotely. So that kind of support continues to be available to us, just in a different way. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Tammy. I mean, so many great pieces of advice in here. I love, don't wait for an employee to tell you they're stressed. Assume they are. My whole family heard my declaration last night. So yeah, that 18-hour thing it is a reality. So Curt and Andrew and Amy, could you all undo your video and maybe Curt, if you want to go first, just 2 or 3 thoughts about how it is you're navigating this as the CEO of
Sure,
the
yeah.
organization.
One of the things that we keep in mind is that we are mission-driven organizations, and we have real purpose in the community, and that's one of the things that attracts our employees to us. So staying focused on your mission is critical at this time. Especially when you're planning reopening and re-entering the marketplace. Your mission has to be your core, and you might have to change some of your operations to meet the new needs of the mission. The other thing we're doing is celebrating big successes, and there's no success that's too small to be counted as a big success. Everything is a success right now. And you've really got to celebrate as many of those as you can. It keeps the team moving forward and focused on the positive. And as Tammy had indicated, having social gatherings, informal gatherings, and those can be one-on-one, and make them as authentic as possible. Really ask people how they're doing. Don't just breeze by that question. You want to know how folks are holding up and how they are handling being separated from their peers. In our case, our whole facility is closed down right now, so everyone's working virtually. And we have a staff happy hour every Friday afternoon, and a different employee hosts every Friday afternoon, and there's a different theme, and we've got trivia and bingo and some different activities and opportunities for folks to sort of share some of what they're doing on their own, whether it's sharing their pets or new artwork they're working on or whatever it is. It's kind of show and tell, which has been a great way to bond and actually learn more about employees and each other. So those are a few ideas that we've been working on, and as Tammy says, over communicate, stay in touch with everyone during this time.
That's perfect. Thank you. Andrew, would you maybe go next? Because while Curt's organization is completely shut down, completely virtual right now, you have a lot of team members who are trying to figure out how to still be on the front lines. So
yeah.
Maybe you have a couple different lenses here.
You bet. Thanks for the opportunity. I didn't know I'd be competing against Amy and Curt for the breakout rooms. They're both great. They're going to do a great job. Really appreciate the opportunity. One of the things that I think a lot about is I like to have control. And this pandemic, unlike anything I've ever experienced, feels like it's being done to us. So I feel like we've really been focused, my leadership team, on the things that we have control over. I think about the serenity prayer, accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And the one thing that I know we can control is how we treat our people. And when I took this job 5 years ago, my focus was kids, 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 and families. And we help others. And so that's really our focus, is ensuring that others that we serve have what they need. And sometimes, as Tammy suggested and Curt indicated, we forget about taking care of ourselves. And so shortly after my kids, kids, kids mantra, I started to really say, people, people, people. Like at the end of the day, nobody gets helped from YSS without our people, or from your organizations without your people. And if we don't have good people, the help that we provide is probably not going to be that helpful. We've got mental therapists, licensed folks helping thousands of people every year. And if they're stressed, you know, what sort of help can they be to the folks that they're serving? So one of our 5 strategic commitments is people. This really intentional focus on people. And I've just got the sense that while our turnover in direct care staff has historically been really high, as it is with most child welfare and youth development agencies, I think that we can actually leverage this crisis and the pandemic to be better. My expectation is that we are a better employer for having gone through COVID-19 than we would have been otherwise. You guys know Barry Griswold, the retired CEO at Principal, who also had a stint at the Community Foundation. He wrote that book called The Adversity Paradox and studied 100 successful leaders and looked for commonalities. And the one was they all experienced adversity. So I'm not a clinician. I'm not a human services expert. But 25 years ago today, I was sitting in treatment, you know, having just been arrested for drunk driving. It was the very worst thing that ever could have happened to me at the time. And guess what? It turns out it was the very best thing that ever could have happened to me. 20 years later, it was just 5 years ago this week that I became CEO of YSS. And so I've struggled a lot in this role. I've muddled, I've trudged, I've really believed that all the adversity I've faced as a leader in this role is molding me to be the leader that YSS needs. And I'm taking the same perspective with our employers. Like, they are experiencing adversity. The stuff that Tammy said, they are going through difficult times, but it's molding them to, you know, hopefully ensure they've got the greatest impact on the youth and the families that we serve. So the last comment that I'll just share is I think that employees are looking for three things. It's autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And Christy said it in her talk. We have purpose abound, and they're asking our leaders three questions. It's, can you help me? Can I trust you? And do you care about me? And so the things that we're doing to tell our employees that we care about them now, I think, are so important. So I'm excited. That's my tease to tell you. Come to Group 2 if you want to hear about some of the things that we're doing to support employees and ensure that we are a better agency and we have less turnover for having gone through COVID-19 than had we not before.
Way to capture the silver lining, Andrew. I greatly appreciate that, and we all need to hear that message. So Amy, a few thoughts here about how you and your team are approaching this crisis.
Sure. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Amy Croll, and I run CYC. For us, we're a small organization, and I apologize, you're probably gonna get more my ceiling than anything. But as a small organization, we always rely on the experience of one another. And so for us, it's really around approaching as a team and recognizing that we're all in this together. If one person doesn't feel safe, that's going to affect the entire team. And so from a leadership perspective, it really requires humility and recognizing I don't have all the answers. None of us have all the answers. And so just recognizing that their input is just as valuable, and they're going to need to do what meets their needs, and their emotional needs are going to come before the agency needs. And that's how it needs to be. That's how it should be at this point in time. We're not in a position as a leader to question what they need and what they're feeling. It's about how do we support them to get the resources that they need so they can be effective and efficient. One of the early suggestions that our staff had, we had a staff meeting to say, hey, you know, this is what we're looking at. What do we want to do together? How do we want to operate together? They said, you know, let's pull in a Slack channel. So it's similar to what Curt mentioned, you know, the Friday get-togethers, but it's our daily get-together. What's the funny meme? What's the funny story? What's the child meltdown that happened? It's our way of connecting with one another to recognize we're all in this together. And there are elements that we just cannot control, and sometimes we just need to laugh about it. The other big thing that we've been doing as a staff is looking at the Kellogg Management Series and just taking this as a time to like reflect on what we want to be and who we want to be as an organization, and coming together to discuss some of those core principles, how they apply, how maybe they don't apply to a small organization, and just learning from one another during that time. Obviously, we're still meeting some of our clients as well. We have students who are meeting. We have, you know, again, just many opportunities for humility. We are ones who focus on youth engagement and letting young people take the lead. And for us, it's been such a breath of fresh air because they have such great ideas and ways in which to deal with communication issues and challenges that frankly they have suggestions of how to get through them that we would never have. And so just leaning into what they have to say and how they want to see us manage has also been super effective and just heartwarming.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to kick it over to Breanne because she knows how this is actually logistically going to work, and I surely do not. So thank you very much. I just want to say that all 4 of these individuals replied to a request to do this in the last like 36 hours. I think Tammy was like 24. So please thank them privately or publicly for stepping up so quickly to help us kind of cultivate this conversation.
Thank you, Suzanne, for helping pull everything together. So as Suzanne mentioned, and Barb, if you can go to the next slide for us, thank you. We are going to be moving into breakout rooms. Many of you have already indicated which of our leaders you would like to be zoomed out to. So I had asked if you do want to join a breakout discussion today, that you put a number in front of your name like we all have here. So you can change your name using those 3, kind of that ellipsis in the top right corner of your video. I think, I don't know, I hope that's where it shows up for other people, but there are different ways to rename yourself. And if you can, if you're having trouble renaming yourself, you can just shoot us a chat and I'll try and Zoom you, but take a minute real quick to go ahead and rename yourself, and then I am going to do my best in 1 minute to Zoom you guys all out to your chosen spots. This does take a minute when we do it this way, so I'm going to do my best. Let's see. And yeah, if you don't want to go to a room, just leave your name without a number, and then you can stay in the main room with Dustin. He's going to be starting his presentation here in just a minute. So if you don't put a number and you don't chat me, I am going to assume that you would like to hang out with Dustin, which is cool too. All right, let's get ready. I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds to work on that, and 10 more seconds for myself to work on that. And then I'm seeing a couple chats come through, so that's good. All right, and we'll Zoom you out. And so Andrew and Kurt and Amy, if you would like to, share a little bit more about what you're doing, but just invite conversation with the leaders in your room. Oh, if we could go to the next slide, actually. Oh, thanks. I do have some kind of just prompts about, and thanks Amy for helping send these to me. Talking about what does it mean emotionally and as an organization to reopen? How do we see ourselves and our procedures moving forward during this time? Amy had a great point. What's the most important element of success a year from now? And what type of leader do you want people to really think of you a year from now for those EDs who are in the room? So those are just some discussion questions. You can veer off path. That's fine. All right, I see some chats here, and I'm just going to go ahead one more time and do a sweep through and get folks to where they indicated, and then we'll go ahead and open the breakout rooms. All right, good. Have a good discussion, and we'll invite Dustin on now.
And Eric is on as well. Eric, if you want to
okay.
get your microphone and video.
Okay, and we'll move to the next slide here.
Yep.
Thank you. All right. Thanks. I have a kind of a different, Barb is helping us behind the scenes today.
Okay.
And so we'll go ahead, and if you can just kind of give her an indication of when
Yep.
to move to the next slide, Dustin. Thanks.
Yep.
I'll pop off for you guys now, so you